Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong, and today we have another fascinating guest. She comes highly recommended for something she's really good at, and that is helping people with their habits. She's been
Mhm.
helping a lot of business leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, business leaders, and all those big people help them understand how deeply impacted our habits are, how habits can impact everything from our daily lives, our professional lives, from our work lives, relationships, connections, successes. Everything is deeply ingrained into our habits. She's also been helping lots of her clients make more, be more, but more importantly, not having to work more, which is something that lots of people are striving for. She's the author of the book I See You. So please welcome Habit Finder Coach, creator of Safe Spaces, CEO, and business strategist, Ms. Amy Kemp.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to
Hey,
be here.
awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Always enjoy speaking with people who has achieved so much and
Mhm.
attack certain like topics like habits. And habits is something that lots of people, oh, that's easy. We just have to stick to something and it's gonna stick and we're gonna keep on doing it and then before they know it, they completely forget about it. But before we jump into the details of habits and how to create them, how to maintain them, how did you become a person who's an expert in habits and helping people kind of become more successful because of
Yeah, I'd love that. By accident.
it?
That's the quick answer. Actually, I had a long career in sales and sales leadership. So I was working to develop people in that arena and recognize that a lot of times throughout probably those two decades of work that we know what we want or should do, but we just don't do it. And I sort of became fascinated with this idea of why do I not do the thing that I know would be beneficial to me? Why do I? It's all the things we set the New Year's resolutions about.
Mm.
Why
That
don't I
all
have
that
a
goes out the window after day two.
Yes. Why don't I follow the budget I set? Why don't I stick with the gym routine that I know is beneficial for me? Why don't I eat the foods that I know would best fuel my body? All of those things that we kind of veer off. So I worked with a coach who used an assessment tool called the Habit Finder in that capacity. It was the most transformational work, and I did a lot of personal development work in that role. It was the most transformational work internally, but also externally in the growth of my business at that time. And then that coach worked with a lot of people within my organization as well. Fast forward, I was in a season of life where I was kind of at the top of a mountain professionally and outside of work had many conversations with very successful women who would come to me and tell me they were isolated, alone, um, exhausted just by the demands of their work and their at-home lives. And I thought, oh, I feel like I need to do something with these women who are all trusting me with their story. So I went to Salt Lake City. That coach that I worked with happens to live there. We met for dinner and I told him about these random conversations I kept having. And he said, I think you really need to do something with this. And on Monday, so this dinner was on Thursday. On Monday, we're starting a new training for people to use the assessment tool and curriculum that he uses called the Habit Finder. And it was the craziest, most didn't make sense thing that I just trusted it and was like, sure, let's do it. So 8 years later, this is the tool that I use to help people uncover, and I'll be really specific. It's not habits of behavior that I work with, it's subconscious habits of thinking. And I help them to both identify, but also to replace habits of thinking that are no longer serving them. It's really cool work.
Well, let's dive into some of this cool work that you do. What is the main difference between the behavioral habits
Mm.
and the mind thinking habits?
Yeah, kind of think of it like the symptom versus what's causing the disease. Sometimes we show up with a sickness or a pain in some part of our body, but the cause of it is deeper. The cause of our behavior typically is rooted in that we are hardwired to survive. And so in our lives, we create patterns of thinking, things like we don't want to have to think about breathing, because we need to save that energy for other things to survive. So we create a groove in our brain that just remembers to breathe. Same thing happens, let's say a survival mechanism for you growing up was working really hard and achieving. And that survival mechanism allowed you to um, maybe get out of a home life that was really difficult, or maybe it helped you to thrive in a work environment that was really challenging. And to a certain point, it served you, and you created a groove that said survival equals working hard and achieving, right? The
Yep.
problem is when you employ a survival mechanism past the point of needing it becomes detrimental and damaging. So, business owners who start new companies, I'm going to work 80 hours a week to get this thing off the ground, works while you're in survival.
Right.
You get to a certain point and you keep doing that same pattern, you're going to burn out and crash and burn. So, that's kind of an example of how subconscious habits of thinking are impacting us, but it's fascinating to really dig deep with people on those, how it's showing up in their world.
So how would one person go in and ungroove that groove or create a new groove
Mhm.
that overpowers that groove?
Yeah. So the assessment tool I use, the Habit Finder, it measures risk. And I always compare it to, let's say there's a high terror risk and you're going through the airport through TSA. What happens when there's a higher threat is that they slow down, they pay closer attention. You bring in more people to support you, like a team of people who are also like catching things that you might not see or be aware of or that you might miss. And then you actually are really uncomfortable. Um, there is a conscious choice to override or to choose a different pattern of thinking, even though your brain is probably going to be screaming danger, danger, danger. It's telling you, no, you need that to survive. It's going to feel wrong and uncomfortable. So like I just talked to a client this week who she again got her business off the ground by working, 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 working really crazy, and then real like was working 80 hours a week. The business was consuming her. And so a lot of our work was around, okay, what do we need to do to slow down and make a conscious choice to shift into this different way of moving through your life and your work? And it's really uncomfortable for her to leave at 4 o'clock. It's really uncomfortable for her to schedule regular vacations. It's really uncomfortable for her to take Fridays off in the summer. Everything in her is like, I shouldn't do that. That's risky. That's dangerous, right? So it's standing in the face of those feelings and saying, like, thank you for that feedback. I know you're trying to keep me safe. However, you're no longer needed to that habit of thinking. Because we're not our thoughts. Our thoughts are just things, they're just moving around in our heads. But most of us who work in performance focused fields, we have really busy minds.
Sleeping is one of those things that's difficult for a lot of people,
Mm,
like high performers who
mm,
go, okay, I have so much stuff going in my head, and you want me to sleep? I can't sleep. Once close my eyes, I think of all this stuff.
all the
So
things.
how does one calm that mind down? And
Mhm,
as you were talking about, like you feel that risk, you feel uncomfortable.
mhm.
Are there certain ways that you could kind of ease your way into it, or is it cold turkey? You just cut it
Mm.
off. Like, what's the best way of navigating through that?
I think it's slow. I think any sustainable life change happens slowly and in the context of an accountable relationship. So, I do think there's a level of accountability needed. One of the things I work on with clients a ton who have the habit of thinking, we call it obsessive, but it just means your brain moves really fast. And it tends to, when you are an obsessive thinker, you tend to uh, just really overthink on ideas. You tend to get a lot more done than the average person. You tend to never stop thinking. In fact, for someone like that, just sitting and doing nothing is not really beneficial because your brain just speeds up and speeds up and
Right.
speeds up. That's what happens when you're getting ready. So what we work on a lot is guilt-free play. Meaning, what are the things that you do outside of your work that you cannot think about your work? You're not, because what you're doing, whether it's a hobby, one of my clients does pottery. She's not very well, but she loves it, right? One of them, plays pickleball. One of them is a biker. But they have these pursuits outside of work where it gives them a chance to calm their mind. And those seemingly frivolous, like guilt-free play that feels, I don't know, like your brain wants to say that's a waste of time and not productive,
Mhm.
actually generate a higher quality of work. People tend to have more creative ideas and solutions to problems when they devote a very significant portion of time to guilt-free play. Our brains need to use like all sides, and if we're just getting things done, it can be detrimental.
What would you say is a good balance of that? Let's say, because like lots of people go,
Mm.
well, is it like 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 20 minutes a
Mm,
day? Like how it's different for everybody. But how do you find
it
that balance
is.
that works right?
I find to start small because you're easing yourself into something that, again, for most of us, our brains are going to say, you don't have time to do that. If you slow down, you're going to fall behind. What's not going to get done? Who do you think you are taking that time off to just play and do something totally meaningless? Like you're going to have all kinds of noise. So I would start slowly where it's like every Tuesday night at 5 o'clock, I'm having dinner with a group of friends and I'm leaving the office to get there, right? Like it's scheduled guilt-free play. And so just start with one thing and do that. What I will say is that the better you get at it, the more you get to play and the less you have to work, which it sounds kind of, I don't know what that sounds like, entitled maybe.
Well,
But I think there's something to be said about what do you want to create?
mhm,
Is your business or the work you're doing, is it a vehicle to create the life you want, or has it become the life?
right.
If you want that, that's fine. I don't. I want my business, which I love and work at with passion and with focus during the hours I allot for it.
Mhm,
I want that in my life and I love it and enjoy it, but that is not my life.
mhm,
That's a vehicle that creates income that allows me to live my life.
right.
So there's a real distinction and like a relationship you have with your work that's important to look at also.
hmm You were talking about how if you get good at it, you get more time to play and experience all that kind of stuff. Have you worked with anybody? Did any of your clients eventually go kind of too far to that one side? They go, "Wow, this is great. I'm gonna do a second day, a
Oh, this
third
is
day," and all of a
such a
sudden,
funny question.
and then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh wait, I haven't spent much time on my business."
Mm, no, because my clients, that is not their risk.
Right.
They are, I don't need to worry about their work ethic. These are not people who, and I will say, I have had some maybe just getting started, younger professional people who want some of these benefits immediately. And I think you can grow something with boundaries all along.
Mm,
I'm not saying that, but I do think there is the person that I work with that I attract is they've already built something or they've gotten to a certain place and they love to work. They're not like a avoiding work type of a person.
right.
That's not their risk, I would say. So this message is for that person who can get lost in the work, or the work can consume them, or the work becomes kind of the master instead of the vehicle.
Mhm.
So yeah, probably it's an audience distinction. I'm sure someone could, but I'm not worried about that at all with my people.
I could just imagine that one person is like, yeah, I've been working so hard all my life, and then all of a sudden, wow, this is great. I should do this more often. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wait, I kind of veered off track. But
Yeah.
that's not the type of clientele you have, and most of the
Mm-mm.
people I know are so focused on their businesses that vacation time is kind of forgotten.
Uh,
Um, we always hear people talk about habits as if it's something that you could just kind of replace easily as long as you
mhm.
stick to it 7 days. And then I've
Oh,
heard 21 days. I've also heard 90 days. What is that
mhm.
range? And how
Yeah.
does one find the right one? Or how
Mhm.
does one kind of fit it into their daily lives so that it actually becomes a habit?
Yeah. Well, I'll kind of frame my answer to this by saying there are two schools of thought habits. One is called systemic. Those habits of thinking are all or nothing, black or white, right or wrong, success or failure. They're very absolute. And those habits of thinking are beneficial when you are completing tasks. Or, for example, I want my architect to get the bridge right.
Mhm.
I want accuracy there. So there is a place where you use systemic thinking. Then there are relational habits of thinking that are very nuanced. They're ongoing. There's never an end or a win or a finish or a success or failure. It's a constant relationship, just like you don't say, "Oh, I went on a date with my partner. I'm done with that now." You know, so most of the areas where habits tend to be most problematic, we're applying a systemic thought, like I've mastered it, to a relational space. We have a relationship with work or our business, just like we do with people, and it never ends. We're constantly renegotiating, investing, showing up for it, pulling back from it, communicating with it. And so there is no, I've conquered it in this work I do. There's like oh, that thing used to pop up all the time, and maybe now it pops up once a year. Or there's oh, there it was again. Oh, I caught it right away and I was able to shift out of it in just days instead of months like it used to take me. And so there's just this ongoing expectation that the work with these habits will be forever. Like it'll just continue as your relationship with someone you really care about would.
Right. So it does take the time, and sometimes it takes certain strategies as well. I
Mm,
know lots of people, for instance, when you're talking about people who goes, I know this is the right thing. I know I shouldn't be smoking, or I know I should be eating more healthy and I should exercise more. But man,
mhm,
it's so easy to sit on my couch and just veg kind of thing, right? So
mhm,
how does one kind of conquer that mindset? Like,
mhm.
and go, you know what,
Yeah.
I need that for right now. But then eventually
Hmm.
that right now becomes a second and a third day kind of thing, right? So how do
Yeah.
how do you combat that or help people kind of trick their minds? Is it
Yeah.
purely a willpower thing, or is it an award system kind of thing, or an
Mm,
accountability kind of thing? How do you help people kind of adjust to the right habits with
yeah.
the right strategy?
Okay, so if you want very short-term change, you can push through, power through, discipline yourself, really buckle down. But it will only last for a short period of time. And I'm really not interested in that because usually then the loss of integrity with yourself is so great and it just creates a worse outcome.
Mm,
Here's what I pay attention to where you resist structure. You know, when you see people on the beach and they're walking along with those metal
metal detectors, yeah.
detectors? Yeah. And then, it beeps and then they dig down and sometimes they find a can and sometimes they find money or whatever. Okay. That's how I always observe people where they are resisting structure or resisting a change in a habit, right? So let's say it's money where you should be following this budget or you should be cutting back on your spending or whatever it is. Wherever it is when you're walking along where you're like, I know that, but beep, 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 I'm not doing it. And you're resisting the structure. If you stop and dig down right there, you will always find unhealed pain.
Mm,
Now, I know people want an easier answer than that because you want just like a checklist you can follow to change that. But what I've found is that if you don't slow down and get really curious, typically with the help of someone who's walking through that with you about why you're resisting structure in that area, you'll just continue in the same patterns if you don't address the actual root of the issue. So, as an example, I write about this in my book. For me, it's money. I had some financial trauma in terms of like I always hesitate to use the word trauma, but it's similar to that in that there was a period of my career where publicly it looked like I was very successful, but behind the scenes, I was struggling to pay the rent, like mortgage. And I was scared and it was really difficult. And so I found there was a financial structure in my business that I wanted to institute, and I just wasn't doing it. I mean, I knew what to do. I'm really smart. Like I didn't it wasn't that I didn't have the tools or the skills or I didn't know what to do. I just wasn't doing it. So I was working with a coach and finally we kind of stopped and she had me walk back through that whole stretch of time where I was and she said, like, you don't trust yourself in this area. You don't trust that you're not going to put yourself in a situation like that again. So I had to do a lot of just journaling and kind of just processing through. I'm not kidding. As soon as I did that work, I immediately took the tiny steps that it took for me to get that structure in place. Do I still want to resist it today? All the time. If you ask my assistant, do I still resist it? All the time, right? But it's there, and I have a team around me that keeps me within this framework, right? I keep it pretty, I do it pretty well, all things considered. But the point wasn't that I didn't know what to do. The point was that I was resisting it because there was something deeper there that was preventing me from really engaging with it.
I like how you brought in the fact that you had like coaches, you have team around you, you have
Mm.
people around you supporting you, calling you out if need be. And lots of people, yeah, I got that. My spouse is my accountability person,
Oh.
or my family member is my accountability person. Why do I need to hire a coach or something like that? To those people, you already said, ooh, what do you say?
Why do I say that? Well, one, because you can't coach your spouse or your partner, whoever is closest to you. There's too much, they have too much connection to your outcomes. That role is just different. Uh, I will say to anyone, I'm deeply concerned about any leader, business owner, whatever, who doesn't have neutral space where the person you're talking to is not an employee, not your boss, not your spouse, they have no connection,
Mm,
in which you can process what's happening. There are too many things where you cannot be clear when you're in a connection relationship, like a coach or someone outside of that situation can be. And I think it is the wisest investment, and it's a part of probably my highest priority. I've spent more, I always tell people, I only know one person in my life who has spent more on that kind of space because I recognize its value. And I also, people always say to me, oh, you're the most disciplined person I know. And I always say, absolutely not. I am the most accountable person you know. I am constantly putting myself in the space of accountability,
mm,
especially in areas where I know I have a tendency to need that support.
I find that most people who have their spouses or their family members as their accountability person is like, yeah, why don't you come and join me and finish the
Oh,
show?
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay, let's go.
Totally. They're easy. You know all their buttons to push.
You mentioned how you went through some periods of time that was very difficult and you
Mhm.
worked through it. I
Yeah.
kind of brought in the whole, hey, is there such thing as like an award system that allows you to trick your
Mhm.
mind? Does that work? Did you implement any of that type of strategy to help you get
Mhm.
into a habit or
Not
a
like a,
punishment?
yeah, not like a trick,
Mhm,
but I will tell you if you want to bust out of or shift the energy of a subconscious habit of thinking that is not serving you, there are three ways that you do it. One, you physically move your body, and that can be you get up and take a walk, you
yep.
dance, you exercise, you whatever the physical movement. There's even one habit of thinking that I work with a lot that's obligation, where your brain is constantly saying have to, need to, should, have to, need to,
Uh,
should. When clients experience that, we use what we call the tomahawk, where you take your hand and you kind of use it like a tomahawk motion in your hand, like you're chopping wood, and you say, stop. I choose to, I want to. But that physical motion brings the thought from the subconscious mind, and you even have a fighting chance of making it a conscious choice to choose a different habit. The second thing is talking out loud to yourself, which is funny, but often in my office, I will say, okay, I'm setting my timer right now to do 30 minutes of focused work on this. No one, no one's in here, but I'm just talking to myself because what I want to do is do the check of the text, the check of the email, the check of the social media, the check of the, and then that's totally just being in reactive mode and not taking proactive action. And then the third thing that disrupts a subconscious habit of thinking is music, which is interesting. So you can completely pull yourself out of a habit with songs. If you're feeling yourself going down a certain pattern, you can change the
Mhm.
music or turn music on and pull yourself in a different
Mhm.
direction.
Yeah, I love that one. I have a 5-year-old,
Mhm.
and I introduced her to Bon Jovi. And one of and one of the songs that she loves is "Have a Nice Day."
Mm.
And from that moment on, every time she's like upset or she's grumpy about something, I put that song on, and she's like, "I feel good," and she's like, "Have a nice day."
That's such a great example and such great parenting, in my opinion. All kids should know Bon Jovi.
It's so funny. She goes, "I like this." I'm like, "Good, you keep listening to this."
Oh,
Um,
good.
when it comes to working with clientele, I know that you don't work with everybody because not everybody is a good fit and you're not a good fit for everyone. But
Mhm.
also, there's some people that's just not ready for the type
Mm,
of coaching and the type of advice that you would be able to give them. What stage are most of your clients at, and how do they get in touch with you, and what do they
mhm.
need to be at so that they're able to accept the type of coaching that you give them?
Yeah. Most of my clients, for the first time in their life, have gotten to a place where just working harder either isn't possible without, like, they're going to get sick, or, I mean, there's going to be some real problems. They can't just work harder or more. Like something is, there's at their max capacity, but they still want more income, more influence, more impact. And so that's why the core message of my book is that you can't outwork your thought habits. There comes a point where it's just not about working harder. So a lot of people come to me when like they've reached this plateau where either it's what level they are in their company, the level of revenue coming into their business, the level of sales they're at, where it's just like, I don't, I'm trying all the old things and it's not moving the needle. I'll also encounter people a lot who are heading into or are in the midst of a transition. Transitions are really tricky for leaders, particularly, and they often show up without any warning, where all of a sudden the thing that you've been so great at and that you're known for and that you loved feels different. You no longer have the drive that you had for it. You can't muster up the same level of enthusiasm for it. And it feels very disorienting. And we do not talk about it nearly enough how common almost every leader I know has gone through a transition like that. But when you're a leader, you can't just talk to anyone about it because most of the people you're leading or like they live in your community and you can't tell them that, especially if your decisions impact hundreds of people. Like you can't, it's inappropriate. And so you're just sitting in this like, oh, plus you know that your decisions will impact a lot of people. So those places tend to be the places where I find people the most. Or if they're transitioning from being more of like a producer to a leader. Those of us that produce a lot tend to get promoted, or we tend to grow our business to the point where then we have a team. Turns out those are two very different skills and they require different things of us. So those are probably the places where I meet people the most.
Very, very true. And one of the what do you call it? Skills that a leader needs to develop when they go from one level to another is creating those safe spaces that allows them to talk to people, help people, and also listen to concerns and challenges and all that kind of stuff. And you're one of the best people to create safe spaces. So, what is some of the aspects of creating safe spaces for people?
Mm. It's probably the thing in my book I write about natural genius. What's the thing you do that feels easy to you but astonishes everyone else? I've always been able to see people um, really deeply. Sometimes it's exhausting. Sometimes I wish I couldn't, because it's even like if I go to a party or I go to a baseball game, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can see people. And so part of holding space for people to me is listening in such a way that they feel understood and seen. Most of my clients are smarter than me. They don't need, particularly in their area of expertise, they're not needing skill development
Mhm.
or what they're needing is a place to process through what's happening. And then sometimes just someone to say, I'm noticing that when you talk about this, this is your tone of voice. But when you talk about that, that's your tone of voice. Like, what do you think is going on there? Sometimes also when you take the courage or you find the courage to hire a coach and you're working with them, what happens is that the thing most in opposition to your progress shows up really quickly. If it's like a toxic boss, if it's an unhealthy relationship you're in your life, if it's an employee that needs to go, if it's a pattern of behavior, it like all of a sudden and you cannot avoid it. So I always think kind of hiring me should have like a warning label too, because it's like, oh, you're about to find out what it is that's really holding you back. And it's just through the work of stepping into a safe space where you can process that.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very excited for that experience. And I've gone through something similar to that when I first worked with my coach. It's like, oh man, that's why I haven't been doing this all this time. It's because of this problem or that issue or that trauma or whatnot. But eventually, when you're working well with your coaches, they'll work it through with you, right? They've
Yeah.
been there, they've done that, and they're able to give you certain strategies to overcome certain things.
Yep.
You've alluded to it a few times, your book, I See You,
Yeah.
and how there's some tips and advice in that book throughout, and that you've been already kind of giving already. What was that journey like? Why did you decide to write that book, and how can people get more impact with that book?
This was the most and continues to be the most vulnerable creative process I've ever walked through in my life. I will tell you, I've been writing the book for 25 years. People ask me, how long did it take?
It sounds familiar. I hear a lot of people say that. It's like, yeah, I've been
Mm,
working on this book all my life.
yeah. Uh, I worked, I would say most of the content of the book is content I've taught for decades, right? I understand it at such a core level and I've seen it show up for people. I wanted to create I describe it as like the foyer to my business where maybe like you want to not come all the way into my house, but you just want to take a step inside to look around at a really low risk, right? Like you can leave real quick if it doesn't feel like a good fit, but it also allows you to get the experience. I designed it. In fact, the reason I chose the publisher I did is because the person I spoke to in the first call said, this feels like a coaching experience in a book when I read it. It feels like I'm being coached by you when I'm reading this. And when she said that, I thought, yes. So it sort of is like a low risk way for you to experience
Mhm.
work with me. But I also know it can stand alone. And for many of my readers, and perhaps if cost is prohibitive, even in a season of life where you don't have access to the funds to invest in coaching, these kinds of resources like my book can provide a filler while you're working to generate more income and move into a new space. So I'm really proud of it. What I'm most proud of is that I wrote it for someone. I wrote it for that person who wants more impact, influence, and income, but who can't work any harder. And I feel like it's really serving my reader. I'm really
And I
proud of that.
And I think there's a lot of people out there who's just banging their heads on the wall, thinking, "Hey, well, why is this not working? It's been working all this time, but it's now becoming diminishing returns, kind of thing, right?" So
Mhm.
I'm sure
Yeah.
it's helping a lot of people and a lot more people on the way. This is a question I have to ask. For somebody who is an expert in habits, what are your daily habits? Something that you do every
Oh,
single day that people should implement into their lives.
I love this question because one of my strengths is some of these daily practices, I would say,
Mhm,
without question, a morning routine. I've used the structure of the Miracle Morning for years, which is I read 10 pages a day from some sort of personal development book. I journal. Right now, I've been reading this really great book called The Artist's Way, and she teaches about morning pages. So I write 3 full pages of just whatever.
mhm,
It has been transformational, um, meditative, healing, helpful, inspiring, frustrating. But I'm doing that journaling, meditation or prayer, and then affirmations, exercises in there as well. But I usually play pickleball later in the day, so mine comes later. But I do the affirmations in the work I do. I use these, they're called scrolls. They're from The Greatest Salesman in the World. It's a famous book by Og Mandino. So I read a scroll every day. But those practices, I have an electric vehicle. I think about it sort of like I plug in my car or I plug in my phone.
mhm,
That morning, like me sitting in the room where there's no TV, no phone, just my journal, my books, my thoughts, me. That's me like plugging in. And that's probably the habit I'm most proud of that I relish, I love, I've like protected and I've continued to like pursue with all of my heart because that's where I receive everything that comes through me and moves out into the world.
mhm.
And so I'm
Wow.
just really aware that when I do that, the work I do, like it multiplies. And it's not because of me, it's just like me being open to let those inspired ideas come out into the world.
Mhm. Wow, that sounds like great advice for people to implement.
Mhm.
And it sounds like at that rate, 3 pages a day in 2 months, you'll probably have your next book.
Oh, stop. I feel since you have a 5-year-old, I feel like that's saying to someone who has a 1-year-old, like, you should have another baby. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna wait till that baby's about 5, and then you can talk to me.
Awesome. Well,
So good.
thank you very much for all
Mhm.
the advice. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Like, for instance,
Mhm.
if you had the world stage and you have a
Yeah.
2 or 3 minutes to share one more message for
Mhm.
everybody to remember Amy for, what would that be?
Yeah. Never, ever, 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 ever apologize for investing a significant amount of money, time, and resource into growing yourself. I, if there's any feeling of guilt that comes up when you do that, I want you to challenge that as an unhealthy habit of thinking. Guilt is a feeling we have when we do something that's harmful to other people. We should feel guilty when we harm other people, but growing yourself doesn't harm anyone around you, and it certainly doesn't harm you. And so that guilt is misguided and can just be let go. But that investment in you and all of the things that it will create through you is so worth it. It's just so absolutely vital.
Totally agreed. Great advice to take. Before I let you go, I do have 5 rapid fire questions for you.
Mm,
Give me the first thing that comes to mind. All
love
right.
it.
You're stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence. What would that be?
Pizza.
You're stuck in the car for hours and hours and hours, and you're allowed to have one song to play
Mm.
on repeat. What would that be?
Leonard Cohen's Alleluia.
Nice choice. Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey, Amy, we love your story. Very inspiring, motivational. We would love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Oh, Taya Leone. I think it's Leone. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, but she's the lead actress in Madam Secretary.
Mhm.
And then she was in The Family Man with Nicolas Cage.
Okay, I
Um,
vaguely remember and
okay,
kind of see
she's
that
in
person.
Madam
Okay.
Secretary is my all-time favorite TV show. She's such a badass in it, and I love her, so I want her.
Okay, she shows up at your door and goes, "Hey, I got cast to play you. Let's hang out. Let's have some fun. But first, she's hungry. And you go, no
Mm.
worries, come on back. I got something perfect prepared for you. What's that special dish?
Okay, the thing I'm best at making, this is going to tell you a lot about my cooking skills, is just homemade popcorn, like real popcorn with real butter made in like an oil, like not microwave or air pop, no air popping. We're looking like for grease and butter. It is so good. That's my specialty.
Sounds like it's gonna be followed up with a movie to watch together.
Totally.
Last question, one, two, three, four. Okay, give me a number from 1 to 5.
Oh, 4.
One, two, three, four. So I got bunny slope. All right. So if you have to use a bunny slope in skiing as a
Mhm.
metaphor for success, how is success like a bunny slope?
Mm. Well, because I think you have to start where you are. I don't think you can start where the experts are or where someone who's 5, 10, 15, 20 years in. I think you start with your skill level and you start with the clay that's in front of you and you get your hands in and you build something with it. And then if it doesn't work, you smash it and you start over. But I think the bunny slope is a good analogy because it's like you're not going to go to the highest mountain to start.
Mhm.
So just ski down the mountain that's in front of you and learn your skill and do it well and get really good at it. And most importantly, have fun while you're doing it, even if you're on the bunny slope. Like enjoy the process of getting better at things and not just thinking I have to get somewhere.
Nicely done. So that's how success is like a bunny slope. Thank you very much for your time, your tips, your advice. Is there any final words from you? And also, what's the best way for people to get in touch?
Sure. Um, so really fun way to get in touch is that you can take the Habit Finder for free on my website, which is just my name, amykemp.com. It says take the free Habit Finder assessment. You get your results right away, and it'll give you a picture of your habits of thinking. The book's available anywhere you buy books, as well as on Audible. It is my voice reading it. People always ask if you're a listener. So I'd invite you into the foyer of my world also through that vehicle.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I have to ask, has anybody gone through the habit finder finding out that a habit that they have is not one that they thought they have?
Oh, everyone. It's the first time I took it, I was a little offended because I just thought like, oh, I don't think that's right. And then the more I uncovered, the more I realized how right it was.
Is it okay for you to share what that was?
Yeah, it was that I was so attached to the success or failure of the people I was leading that I was exhausted.
Ah,
I couldn't let them have their own experience without feeling like it was my fault or like I needed to manage it so they didn't fail.
mhm.
And it was life changing. That's actually why my business tripled in size when I worked with that coach
Well,
because I learned to let people fail.
that is very cool. All right.
Hmm.
So everybody
Yep.
out there, make sure you go to her website and take that free test and find out what your habits are and maybe some habits that you didn't think you had. So
Mhm.
make sure you do that and get connected with Amy. Thank you very much again for your time. Always a pleasure speaking with people like yourself who is very, very successful in what they do and have a very niche expertise in something which is habits. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Fong.
Awesome for everybody else. Stay until next time. Today is the day to lock your peak potential. We'll see you next time.